Yo, what's up guys? Today I have a new build for you guys combining Striga with Necrotic Grip so that we can poison every single enemy in our vicinity, gun them down with our primary weapon, and with this build we're going to have excellent ad clearing ability, poison everything in our vicinity from dealing damage with our weapons and abilities. And the main thing about this build that I do like, we're going to be using the ability Lightning Surge combined with Necrotic Grips and Striga, so we're able to clear out mobs of enemies because we're going to be able to poison enemies by using our abilities or our weapons, mainly Striga, and we're going to be spamming that Lightning Surge ability. If you guys like the content, please subscribe and stick around so I can dive straight into the build. So the first two things that are mandatory to make this build work will be Striga and Narcotic Grip. The exotic perk is called Grasp of the Devourer. So damaging combatants poison them, dealing increased damage over time. Defeating a poison combatant spreads the condition. So that means that even if we're getting kills with our weapon, so even if we're dealing damage with our melee, or even if we're dealing damage with Lightning Surge, any of our arc abilities, including our grenade, or just using Striga, that's gonna give poison to our enemies. And once we defeat those enemies, we're gonna spread that poison. That's kind of the setup of the build. We're going to be doing a lot of poison damage. This is pre-Lightfall, so we're going to see what Lightfall brings to top this off. But this is the exotic meaning for the build. Other than this exotic, the other main important thing we're going to be using is going to be Striga. Striga is an exotic from when Witch King first dropped and be able to craft it. Obviously mine isn't that high, so I don't have the catalyst, but with Striga you're already using poison, and it fires a stream of sentient toxic projectiles that track to the targeted enemies. So you basically have free aim when you're using this exotic. You have free aim when you're using this exotic, and it has a toxic. The trait of this exotic is called Toxic Overload. So when you land a final blow or multiple precision hits, that triggers a burst of poisons near nearby targets. So that in tune just makes the explosion of poison larger combined with Necrotic Grip. So it's just stacking on top of each other, so you're able to spread that poison and damage over time to enemies in the vicinity once you defeat them with Striga. Now the going side of the subclass, we're gonna keep everything is pretty much the same. The main important parts of the build will be the aspects, which would be Lightning Surge. That's how we're able to slide forward and do that uppercut, which you've probably seen a lot of doing Trials and Iron Banner. A lot of warlocks are using it. And we're going to combine that with Electrostatic Mine. The grenade we're going to be using will be Arc Bolt Grenade, and the melee doesn't matter because we're going to be using Lightning Surge. For the fragments are just going to optimize the build. We're going to be rocking Spark of Ion, so we're able to spawn Ionic Traces once we defeat a jolted target, and we're going to be jolting targets with our grenade. We're going to be using Spark of Resistance, so while we are surrounded by combatants, we're going to become more resistant to damage, so that's just going to add on top of our resilience. We're going to be running Spark of Frequency, so melee hit greatly increase your reload speed for a short duration. And since we are spamming our melee, this is just going to be a side effect of us spamming our melee. It's going to increase our reload speed for Striga, which is a great side effect because Striga does kind of have a slow reload speed. The next thing we're going to have will be Spark of Feedback. So we're going to be able to increase our melee damage anytime we do take melee damage from enemy opponents. Melee damage is going to briefly increase our outgoing melee damage. That's pretty much it for the arc setup. And other than that, we're going to be using a lot of elemental mods in this build to make it work. So if you don't have the elemental mods, please check in with Ada Daily so you can get the elemental mods and get this build, set this build up right so you can spam your melee ability. So the first thing, we are going to be using Well of Ions on our class ability combined with Solo Operative. You can always swap out Solo Operative for Weaken and Clear depending on the content you're running, but Well of Ions just means that picking up an Arc Elemental Well causes your next melee damage to deal increased damage. So since we will be spawning Arc Elemental Wells, when we pick it up, we do want our melee to do increased damage. The next thing we are going to be rocking will be Heavy Handed. While charged with Light, you're going to regain half of your melee energy. While charged with Light, you are going to regain half of your melee energy when you use a charged melee ability. So, in the video clip you're seeing, we are in the new dungeon, and I did not have a way to become charged with Light. So you see, I'm kind of struggling to regain my melee energy, and I'm just walking around, charging enemies up. I'm walking around and defeating enemies with Lightning Surge, but I'm not consistently getting my melee back. That's the difference of using this mod and not using it. Once you do have heavy-handed, which I am going to show in the clip right now, when I am doing the new seasonal activity, you're able to consistently get your melee back. So you do need heavy-handed. So check with 8 and 1 daily, see if you can get heavy-handed. Other than that, we are going to be using melee well maker because we are spamming lightning surge, and lightning surge is our melee ability. So we want to spawn an elemental well mod every time we do defeat an enemy with our melee. Other than elemental melee well maker, we want to be using another way to consistently generate elemental well mods, because we want to become charged with light before we even use our elemental well mod, because we are using heavy-handed. It's going to be counterintuitive not to be charged with light while using heavy-handed. So we have elemental ordnance just so we can spawn an elemental well mod before we use our melee ability. And the last mod we do have will be elemental charge. So once we do spawn those elemental wells, we're able to pick it up and become charged with light. And that's pretty much it for the build, guys. We want to become charged with light, and the most important thing we want to have while charged with light, if you want to simplify this build down, is just heavy-handed. And that's it for the build. Necrotic Grips, Offshore Striga, heavy-handed, charged with light. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next build video.